Love Your Kitchen, Design in the Heart of the Home, proudly sponsored by Blum, the podcast where we explore the art of crafting your dream kitchen. I'm your host, Faye Newman, a freelance kitchen designer with a passion for creating spaces that truly reflect the heart of the home. And welcome to another episode of the Love Your Kitchen podcast. As ever, thank you very much for joining me. So today we've got a really special guest, which we're super excited about. We've got Sofia, who is the founder of a prestigious Scandinavian company based in London called Sola Kitchens. So we're so excited to have you on the show. When we talk about design, they're going to be perfect. So by the end of this episode, what you will get is we'll talk about topics like we'll discuss the core principles of Scandinavian design and how you can apply them within your own kitchens or for your own upcoming kitchen project. We'll also learn how to choose and combine sort of natural materials, layering them like with different woods to gain sort of the warmth and character that's prevalent throughout Scandinavian design. And then finally, we'll go into and find inspiration for creating a timeless, functional and stylish kitchen that reflects your personality. So that's what we're hoping to get from today's episode. So Sophia, why don't you just tell us about Sola Kitchen's story, how you started, the name as well. Why is it called Sola Kitchens? Give us a brief overview.
Yeah, okay. So it all started 20 years ago, and I had a first life as a solicitor. Yeah. So I studied and became a solicitor, and I moved to Brussels and worked there. And in 2001, I moved to the UK and continued to work with law over here. And I moved. Bought a flat in central London. This is 25 years ago, so that's when you could buy a flat in central London. And I needed a kitchen. And being Swedish, I looked around everywhere and tried to find something I really loved, but I couldn't find anything that was what I knew from Sweden with the quality and the design and the functionality. So I went back to Sweden and bought a kitchen from there. So the first kitchen was shipped over and installed, and then some of my friends came around and saw it, and they said, "Oh, this is amazing! Can you help us to get kitchens from Sweden as well?" So that's how the idea came about, and then it took a few years before I actually took the plunge and decided to leave law and to start Sola Kitchens.
Yeah, and you must have really enjoyed that as well, then the process of designing your own kitchen, obviously going back and forth with home and that creative element, because obviously you didn't get that in your solicitor role, I can imagine.
No, not at all. I've kind of always I liked law, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And I always felt that I wanted to work with something I really loved, and looking at kitchens, I love eating to start with.
That's a great start.
Yeah, and I love cooking and I love being in kitchens because it's just such a nice environment. It's where you meet, it's where you talk, it's where you chat and meet over generations and friends and all of that. So always loved the kitchens, and I like design. So that kind of all came together and with the idea. So I started the company in 2006, so that is now 19 years ago. And of course, when I started, I didn't know anything about kitchens, nothing about design, and nothing about running a company. So it was a bit of a challenge. So the first few years was basically just setting up and trying to understand A, how do you run a company, and B, how do you design and install kitchens. So we did a lot of mistakes, obviously, the first few years, which we learned from. And in 2010, I opened my first showroom in Fulham, which was extremely exciting, and that's when it kind of become a bit more proper because now I had a retail store. And the idea when I started the company was always to grow it and have a bigger company with a full design team, several different showrooms, and a proper structure behind it. We opened in Hampstead 2016, and then we opened here at Wigmore Street 3 years ago. So 22, summer 22.
And where did your name come from?
So when I started it, at the very beginning, I started it with a friend, and her name was Lara. And I'm Sophia. So Sola came from Sofia and Lara. Lara then unfortunately moved to Hong Kong after a couple of years, so she left very, very early on. It was one of those things. A lot of kitchen companies have names that have the person's name over the door.
Yes.
And because how I wanted to build it and what I intended to do, it was never going to be about me. So I wanted to have a name which was neutral to me, and also short name, easy to understand, works in many countries, and so there we go. So that is.
I thought it was going to be something to do with the sun or something like that, but that's great that you've managed to combine those two names together.
Actually, sola in Swedish means to sunbathe. So yeah,
perfect. Maybe that could be sort of a franchise after this, who knows? Okay, amazing. So let's talk about the heart of Scandinavian design now, because obviously that's why we're all here. What are some of the core principles, like the sort of, the minimalistic, less is more sort of approach, and that define sort of the style of a Scandinavian kitchen?
So looking at Scandinavian design it's a very big and broad word or concept, and I think a lot of people think about Scandinavian design and think very differently. Some people see it as super minimalistic, and some people see it more as the natural materials and wood, and some people see it a little bit more as shabby chic. And to be honest, it's kind of all of that, because Scandinavian design is not one single type of design. It can be very different. And the best example is to look at Danish and Swedish design, which is very, very different from each other. It's all referred to as Scandinavian design, but if you look at Danish design, that is super minimalistic. They won't do anything more than absolutely required to get that super sleek, minimalistic look. If you go to Sweden, it's much more homely. So you have more materials, you have more fabric, you have more colors. So it is actually different. Looking at, for example, a shaker door, Denmark would really never use shaker doors; it just doesn't exist there. But in Sweden, a shaker door is quite common. It wouldn't be as probably as decorative or as fluffy as some of the designs that you get the classic English styles, but it wouldn't be as minimalistic as the Danish style. So that's a kind of good thing to keep in mind, that Scandinavian design can be very different depending on where in Scandinavia you go.
100%. And I think just because we're going to go through a few lovely examples sort of with you all today as well, you'll see that as well, because I think the sort of approach for me, if I wasn't a designer, would be that you go for light doors, very neutral. You go for a wooden worktop, or maybe tie it in with some natural stone. And then that's classed as a Scandinavian kitchen. So I think it's I'm really excited to learn more about sort of the added textures and obviously go through those sort of finer details on the examples we've got to show you today.
So looking at, just continue on that, I think the first thing that you look at when it comes to Scandinavian design is functionality. It has to start with function. And if it doesn't work, it's pointless to design it. You've probably heard of the expression form follows function, which is ingrained in Scandinavian design. And so I think that's where the design team here, we are super focused on starting with that functionality, and help every single client to make sure that the design is correct for them and works for them. And that, of course, can be very different from client to client.
Yes, it's a more tailored approach, isn't it? And I think I do this very much sort of with my designs as well. It's getting the building blocks in place first, figuring out sort of the appliances, like how you're actually going to use that space, your habits, that sort of thing initially first, because I think sometimes as well, you probably find when you start to add the style elements, or you're talking about different sort of ranges, like door profiles and things to go for, there's so many decisions for a client to make, and sometimes people like they want to start there, and you're like, no, let's peel it back first and just solely focus on the core principles of how that kitchen is actually going to work, and then start layering on and making those beautiful design choices that's, you know, very personalized to the client, as well as obviously working well with the aesthetic that you're, you know, overall going with. So that's a great point.
Yes. So looking at the again on the Scandinavian designs and what makes up Scandinavian design, the other super well, there are two other things that are very, very basic, and the first is light.
Yeah.
So Scandinavia doesn't have a lot of light in the winter.
This is true, actually.
Oh, it's so
How
true.
ironic that it's natural light.
Yeah. So if you look at the north of Sweden and Norway and Finland, you will have about 8 weeks of the year where the sun doesn't rise at all. It's dark, and it is lighter in the south of Sweden, for example, but it's still dark. And in the middle of the winter, you do have the sun coming up, but it's just hanging above the tree level, so it doesn't actually give an awful lot of good sunlight.
Okay.
And so to try to utilize as much of that bleak light as you can, that's why Scandinavians use a lot of light colours, light and bright colours. So you get a little bit of light in, and you want that to reflect on what you have inside. And that is kind of the core of where a lot of the color schemes in Sweden and Denmark and the other Scandinavian countries are coming from. It's based on that light. The other important or big thing is, of course, wood. So looking at Sweden, 70% of Sweden is covered over forests. There's an awful lot of trees.
There's no sunlight, but there are trees.
There are
so you
loads
still
of trees.
breathe, which is great.
Exactly. And of course, if you look at buildings, the vast majority of buildings in Sweden are built out of wood. They're wood houses. And it's the same inside. We do use an awful lot of natural wood just because it's available. It's also extremely beautiful. It's a fantastic product to work with. But that is also the basis of why do Scandinavia use so much wood. There's a lot of it.
No, that makes complete sense. And we're finding even sort of over here now, like in the UK, that's starting to become, you know, more, I don't want to say like a trend, but, you know, clients are more focused about where the materials are being sourced from now, you know, layering different sort of wood tones, mixing different materials, adding textures onto worktops. I've seen the fluted sections over there in your lovely showroom, you know, things like that, just to add a little bit more detail. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the materials that you use as a basis for your furniture first, and why you do that, because obviously a kitchen needs to function in so many ways, not just to cook. It needs to, you know, if you've got children running around, and as we mentioned earlier when we had our brief chat, you know, if they've knocked a corner, things like that, you want to make sure that the durability is still there within your kitchen. So talk us through a little bit more about how Sola sort of considers those you know, those things potentially happening, as well as the materials that you use.
Yeah. So we use a lot of wood in our kitchens, and there are different types of wood you can use, different functions of it. It's solid wood, or it's wood veneer, which is basically a thin strip of wood that you put in front on cabinet doors. The basic reasons why we use a lot of wood is that it's beautiful. So you see the graining through, even if you paint on wood, you see the lovely wood graining through, and it just looks really beautiful, and it gives that warm feel to the room. Wood is also very practical. It depends a little bit on how you use it. We build our doors, for example, with a solid wood frame and then over veneer them, which means that it's a super sturdy construction, because what is going to be battered first in the kitchen when you use it, because people use the kitchen, that's why you do kitchen.
They're not all for show.
Exactly. It's going to be the edges of doors and things like that. And by using a solid wood frame around that, that means even if you do get a knock, it won't destroy the functionality of it. It will still be perfectly solid. And other things that we think about is paint, for example. We talked about that a bit earlier today. And there are two ways of painting a kitchen. You can either spray paint it or you can hand paint it. They have some different qualities, but we love to do hand painted kitchen for two main reasons. One is that when you hand paint the kitchen in the space, you can get the finishes perfect. You can fill all the joints and edges, and you can get this super lovely finish. And especially in British houses that aren't usually always completely straight.
We had this chat earlier as well. Apparently it differs massively to Sweden.
Yes. So if your wall is not straight, for example, and you need to put in a filler, that can be lovely. Well, that can be really nicely covered by filler and paint over it. And the other really good thing with hand painting is that if you do get a scratch, if you do have 3-year-old that goes out with his marker pens and paint on it, or ram the kitchen cabinetry with a bike or a scooter or whatever it might be, that kids do, then if you have a hand painted kitchen, it's really easy just to have it sand down, repainted, and it will look absolutely brand new again. So that's kind of the outside in terms of functionality. And looking at the inside, all the drawers and everything, we always use solid wood. It's just, it looks beautiful, it will last forever, and it's just a lovely product to work with.
No, of course. And then, so say if we've got somebody watching that loves to have sort of partly painting, but then also wants to introduce, maybe the exposed wooden things, maybe for the wall cabinetry, or say if you've got like an island, or you want to, interlink it slightly, if you've got like an open plan space, how do you go about sort of, marrying up those and not going too far with it? Just like you've just plunked these wooden elements here to try and make it a Scandinavian design.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that you don't want it to look like a sauna. So yeah, so you can overdo the wood elements, but it all depends on how it's designed. What we do in most of our kitchens is to mix different colors and materials and textures to get really subtle layers and beautiful finishes. So if a client comes in and say, "I'd love to have some wood in my kitchen," the first thing would be to, okay, where will it work? And where will it work with the rest of the element in the kitchen? What is the flooring going to be?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a wood floor? And then you may want to use a similar tone, but you don't want to put wood on wood. And then you could have, for example, a lovely set of wall units in wood, or you could do an island in wood.
Yeah.
It's also, you can also bring in wood in a more subtle way. For example, just having the frames of the cabinetry in wood, so you just see details of wood coming through the painted or metal or stone or whatever the cabinetry door may be made of. So there are all sorts of different ways of getting wood into the kitchen. Another way would be to have the interior in wood. So, for example, if you have wall units with a thin shake frame, for example, and then you veneer the inside of all those cabinets in wood, you get that lovely warm wood feel, but you actually use it inside the cabinets instead of outside. So we would approach every kitchen differently, understand how much wood the client wants, the tone of wood as well, because we do a lot of different tones with stained wood, with pigment wood, to get different colours and shades of it, and that would be the starting point.
Amazing. I think it's time to look through some examples then, because I'm getting excited to hear about them.
Okay, yeah.
So the first example that we've got to show you is perfectly related to what we've just spoken about regarding materials. We've got a beautiful big sort of kitchen diner to speak about, and they've incorporated so many different sort of natural materials, and it shows off the almost like the shape, the small sort of shaker profiling that you mentioned at the start of the episode. So talk us through a little bit more about that project, like the client's brief, the layering of materials, and then also obviously the added textures that we can see as well.
Okay, excellent. So the brief for this kitchen was that the client wanted a Scandinavian looking kitchen, very light materials, and but to have interest in them with the different materials and different textures. So the basics was one of our styles called Fjord, which is the one you see on the base cabinets with a slim, deep shaker style front. The top part of that is actually the handle, so it's an integrated handle, so really good functionality. And then we have rattan in our showroom, and they liked the rattan, so they wanted to use that on some of the doors, but they wanted a little bit of added details. So on the wall units, where you can see the rattan, we also added additional fretting around the door, just as a little bit of an extra detail. And it's the first time we've done this, and we worked very closely with the interior designer on the project, and so they suggested it, and then we actually made it work in reality. And on the other side of the room, the wall units with the glazing, they are actually in sprayed metal.
Are they?
Yes. So
Oh, wow.
the frame and the carcass and everything is in a sprayed bronze metal. So again, the tone is very similar. It goes very well with the rest of it, but it's a completely different.
I wouldn't think they would go so nicely together,
No,
would you?
but they do. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah,
Because then also you've matched that with your cooker tap as well. You've obviously
exactly.
got like a bronze effect on the tap, so therefore that marries up quite nicely. And because it's all the similar tones, that's why it's working so well.
Exactly, and then it's all kind of held together by the worktop, which is a quartzite called Pralamanata, and it's a beautiful beige stone, which brings all those wood, rattan, and metal tones together, just in a beautiful way.
No, for sure. And even just small details like making that worktop, you know, deeper or thicker on the one side, obviously because you've got your venting hob there, so that's probably carrying a bit of the under section that you always have with venting hobs. But again, it's quite a neutral looking worktop amongst the scheme, but because you've added such a lovely design detail alongside, everything else, it's still sort of linear, it's still free flowing like everything else. That's why it's just working so beautifully. But I'm so going back to the detail of the rattan here, what we've got is sort of like a piece of sort of beading coming down and then across, so as well as sort of the natural frame, as well as the normal frame that you have sort of for that range. And again, it's just following those lines. It just looks and just works really beautifully.
Yes, I agree. We love this project.
Was there anything specific that the client asked for from a function perspective for this client?
Yes, it was. So in the tall unit on the right hand side of the kitchen, actually hides a food lift. So a dumbwaiter, yes. So we wanted to have the cabinet hiding the dumbwaiter and the fridge freezer, which is on the left hand side, kind of to frame the kitchen, and it's quite complex building in dumbwaiters. You have to work closely with the supplier of the lift supplier to make sure all the functionality works behind it. So it's absolutely fine. It's just a process to go through and be super detailed to make sure that everything is thought about to make sure it works.
I can imagine that was a lot of head scratching from your side.
Yep.
Just being like, okay, I need to make sure this works. But equally, because you build everything yourselves anyway, and everything is made bespoke and made to order. This is the beauty of that, because it allows you to do something like that. I mean, looking at face value at that design, I would have just thought that's a beautiful larder section on that side. And this is what's so great about optimizing function and but just making it still look beautiful. Like if you say function, it's quite an unsexy word to say. And it is.
Yes, yes.
It's like clients don't come to us saying, Faye, I want a kitchen that's functional, or they do sometimes, but they're like, I want it to look beautiful, I want this, and this is why it's so great from a designer's perspective to, you know, incorporate elements like this so well and make it hidden and just allow that whole scheme not to be affected by something that could look quite ugly.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I think also something which is worth pointing out is that it's the designs and the schemes that look super simple. They are usually the most difficult to execute in the
100%,
background.
I could not agree with that more.
Yeah.
It's so true, because everything, all of the cabinets used have to work more. So it's, yeah, again, a lot of work prior to understand, you know, how you're going to use that space and exactly what you need in, you know, each cabinet, to allow you not to need the, you know, a wall cluttered with lots of cabinetry just for the sake of it. And that's what's, you know, is prevalent just in your ethos and how you're designing, which is amazing. So we're going now to a very different design, and this marries up really beautifully to what we spoke about beforehand, the difference between Danish and Sweden. You'd look at this kitchen and probably think, actually, you know, it doesn't look very Scandinavian at face value, because it's a beautiful, you know, carbon colour, isn't it? So it's a really dark scheme, or you know, jet black essentially. So talk us a little bit more again about, you know, the clients, what they wanted, you know, what sort of ranges you've used and tones and other sort of finishes within this space.
Okay, so it's a converted barn, as you can see from the from the ceiling. So it's a very large space and very open and huge ceiling heights. And we had those beautiful beams going across the ceiling. So loads of exposed wood already. And so there we found that it was a little bit difficult to have a more of a natural wood tone with the kitchen, because the risk would have been that it would be too much wood.
Yeah.
So the decision was to go for wood veneer, but to go for darker tone. And because of the space and how big it is, it could really carry this black kitchen. And looking at the actual cabinetry, it's a combination of two different styles. So the wall unit, if you look at close up, has this very slim slatted units. So you get the lovely texture which coming through, which is it's beautiful. And on the tall units and on the island, it's exactly the same wood, so it's a black stained oak, but they are flat. So it's that combination, the same tone, but just a different structure of the cabinets. One of the interesting things here was that you see the beams going in through the cabinet. Wasn't quite planned. We weren't quite told about that to start with. So when we realised it, we then had to rebuild two of the units, and half of the unit is fixed and built around the beam perfectly, and the other half is a door, so you can get access. And we added all the little slats individually around the beams, so it looks completely integrated and it works beautifully. So that was interesting. And then in this kitchen, the client also chose to have a black worktop. So it's a decked on worktop, so it's a super hard material with a little bit of light vein in it, which then goes really well with the concrete floor.
Yes, of course. And then if you're listening and you're not actually seeing these examples straight away, when we're talking about this, again, it's just so different to the perceived sort of, you know, persona of what, you know, a Scandinavian kitchen looks like. But again, it just works so beautifully. And as you say, because you've not done sort of the reeded sort of element or the fluted element sort of going on the base cabinetry as well, it just draws your eye straight to there. And I think almost, I know the beams wasn't, you know, a design detail sort of initially to think about, but again, integrating that all in just allows it, you know, to work just so beautifully within, you know, that space. And it's all about, this is the common thing with kitchens, isn't it, as you probably know. things like this does happen all the time.
Yeah.
And
that's
it's
the-
okay for that to happen.
And that's the beauty with bespoke cabinetry, because you
Course.
can always work around these things
Yeah.
as and when required.
No, for sure. And then from the inside of these cabinets there, so it looks like we've got, few drawers sort of either side where the cooking area is. Is there anything sort of specific again that you needed to, incorporate into this project specific for the clients?
They wanted a lot of workspace, so hence the large island, and also the big social island with a hob in, and then the full tall range of tall units just house all the fridge, freezer, big larder, so excellent storage space. It's really nicely sectioned, this kitchen. You have the cooking and preparation space in the middle around the island, and the back wall, and then all the big storage to the side. So yeah.
Amazing. And if we've got somebody sort of watching that is loving this scheme, loving how sort of dark and how brave these clients have gone with this design, but they're afraid that their space maybe, they're like, oh, I don't know whether to do it or not. Like, what are the key elements to sort of look into? So obviously we've got such a beautiful big room. You've got the wooden elements at the top here. Is there anything else from a consideration perspective that they could think about before maybe taking the leap and going for that really dark, bold contrast?
So if you don't have a massive big barn like this, but still like the dark and moody and bold colours, a really good way to do it is to use dark colours on some of the cabinetry, and then pair it up with a light worktop.
Okay.
Because when you actually go into kitchen, because of the cabinetry are vertical and the worktop is horizontal, you actually see more of the worktop, and you get the light reflecting from the worktop. And you can also think about, for example, putting darker, bolder colors on base units, and then the lighter worktop, and then maybe a different color above, and then you get that interest and lovely colors, but it doesn't make the whole space feel too dark.
No, of course. No, that makes sense. And this is it. And also applying sort of neutrals around the rest of the room, like with your flooring, your wall colour, that sort of thing. Again, that'll just marry up really beautifully. But no, thank you so much for going through those two with us. I think they've been, they're a great contrast, I feel, side by side. They're two beautiful kitchens, but they look so different. So that's amazing. We've got a couple more to show you, and one is based off, well, actually, you did this design first. And then you did this beautiful display off the back of that, and it just looks so luxurious. And again, it's a beautiful contrast, beautiful detailing on that design. So I'm super excited to cover that. And then we've got a second, which is more light, layering neutrals, and then having quite a lot of exposed wood actually within that space. And again, we'll just talk through why Sola has added certain design elements into both projects. So Sophia, let's talk firstly about the one on the right.
This project came about. The client is an architect, and she had very clear views of what she wanted. She's also Danish, which is interesting, and she wanted to combine different styles and materials. So if you look at those, the two styles, so the back wall, the black back wall of cabinets, we call it Gustavian, and it's the same cabinetry as you have behind us here, and it's a really quite a classic door style, and it's not really what you maybe think about immediately as Scandinavian. The island, on the other hand, is super Scandinavian. It's a style that we call hygge, which means cozy and homely. And this design of this very slim slatted front was actually designed in Denmark in the 1960s. So if you go to kitchen showrooms in Denmark, pretty much every single showroom will have a version of these slim slatted drawers. And the whole idea behind it is that it should have the complete uniform look with the slim drawer fronts, but you can combine it in different ways. You can have single drawers, double drawers, really deep drawers, or even doors coming out of the same side, but from the outside it looks the same. And that is what we think are really quite a modern design. So mixing those two styles, the very classic Gustavian and the modern Hygge range, was quite unusual when we did this. It's kind of started off a little bit our now quite wild mixing and matching of styles, but you look at it and it just works beautifully. It's one of our absolutely favorite projects when people coming in with this picture, say we want this, and that's why we decided to go do this in the back. So the idea behind the design is that this is in a big open space room. The kitchen is visible from the living area, from the dining area. So the client wanted to hide as much as possible. So the whole of the back wall, those 4 big cupboards, all have pocket doors. And they hide the ovens behind one. They hide the cooking preparation area and storage area. So, which means that she can open up everything, use the kitchen, cook, and then she can just close it all again, and everything looks beautiful and clean. The other wall on the left-hand side has the fridge, freezer, and wine cooler. The fridge and freezer are integrated, and one set of doors actually leads into back kitchen.
I love a secret door.
Yeah. And that again, with this design, it looks super simple. Everything behind this is really quite complex to work together. How to get these rather big doors to function, particularly since we didn't want the wall in between to hinge it, so they sit butt up next to a fridge and freezer door. Okay. So it was quite difficult to put together, but it worked out beautifully in the end.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing. And again, having everything sort of hidden is just, again, really popular now, just in kitchen design as a whole.
Yeah.
Having sort of your ovens maybe not on display, even though appliances have come on so much from a design perspective as well. So I can see why that's so, and works so perfectly in this design as well, with it being just a big open plan space. You don't want to just, be looking at ovens and things like that. So I think that'll be really, helpful as a new suggestion for clients to think about as well.
And also with the pocket doors, the functionality and mechanism of the pocket doors has developed a lot over the last few years, so they work much better than they did previously. So they're really quite smooth to handle now.
And also because they sit back into the cabinetry, you don't have to think about door swings.
Exactly.
Or if there were a bifold, you'd have to think about a larger width on sort of the right and the left hand side, which will eat into your space. That's, if you're using it as like a working space, or if you're using that for appliances, you'd have to think about those allowances. So that's why pocket doors, usually you allow sort of 80 to 100 mil either side, don't you, for the leverage to then pop those back. But then once they're back, you could literally have all of that back wall, open, and then you could still use that really well, which is tied into the functionality element of just Scandinavian design as a whole.
100%.
And I can completely understand why these drawers are so beautiful. I'd just forget which drawer's which, but I suppose that's the beauty of it, isn't it? When
you learn quite quickly. Okay. Actually, we have these in all the showrooms, and you learn really quickly what's what.
So I can imagine as a sort of used to handles, as somebody from the UK, I'd be like, oh my god, how do I open that? As you say, I suppose hopefully you would adapt to that. And you've got some beautiful internals in the cabinetry at the back as well. So this represents the beautiful veneered cabinetry that you have, the solid wood sort of drawers, things like that. Is there anything specific that you had to think about storing in there? I mean, I've had a client before that needed a specific tea bag drawer. Yeah. As a true English, design.
Very tea bag drawers. The 4 back units were designed for different functionalities. So one is set up for baking, one is with all the ovens cooking, and then one is for storing crockery, and one is for storing the food. So it's very clear divisions of what to store.
And it's good that they've got the space to do that, and they've got those clear, as you say, ways to do that. But if you haven't got the space, what you can do is section your drawers and things in order to make that sort of work for you. So that works beautifully. And what worktop, can you remember what worktop's
Yes.
on here?
So this worktop, it's called Blue Fusion. It's a natural stone. It's a quartzite, and it's a beautiful, beautiful worktop. The slabs look very different. You can get all sorts of different veining and colors in a Blue Fusion, and we just went to pick this particular one to work with the natural wood colors, the oak
Yeah.
and the black paint, and also the floor. So it just kind of marries all those different colors together.
Yeah, and it's got such a beautiful design. So obviously, if you're taking this out of the same slab on your island, if they're cutting that and then using that for one of the sides as well, you'll get that beautiful wave, almost book matched.
It is perfectly book matched.
It is perfectly amazing. So book matched, going sort of from the vertical across to the horizontal, and as you say, these are considered simple design, elements, but there's a lot of detail that's gone into it. Even the small mitre joint there to make that look better rather than just butt jointing them together. And this is what's true about beautiful yet simple, design. So yeah, that's a stunning project. I can completely understand why that's so popular and why you've now inherited that into your your Wigmore showroom. So now we go to a completely different example. So let's talk about the clients again, their brief, and also what types of wood you've used here, and maybe what colours you've what shade of neutral colours you've done for the painted elements as well.
So this kitchen is pretty much white and oak, and that is a very, very popular combination, and it's a combination that I personally love, and I think it works in most spaces. And you can choose different type of cabinetry. You can have a slightly more classic, or these have just completely flat fronted cabinetry, but there are different ways of doing it by combining the same color styles and color combinations. So here we use a white painted a flat door for some of the tall units and some of the wall units. And on the back, there is quite a large wall. It's a bank unit, but with the slim slatted style, which we call skog. So it has that lovely texture when you see it. Exactly. Yeah. And it's actually accessed from the left and right. So one side houses a washing machine and a little bit of a laundry area. Of course it does. And the other side is more of a bar area with a wine fridge and shelf. And what you see from the kitchen side is just this beautiful wall of textured wood. We then picked up the same wood and the same coloring of the wood for the flat elements that you have on some of the base units, and also looking at the open shelves between the two tall units. On the wall there, again, we put in the slatted detail
tying it in beautifully
to tie it in with the back of the wall. And again, it's just such a light, bright kitchen. It makes you smile and just want to go in there and be there and start to cook there.
Yeah, and just be relaxed as well. If I was sitting on these stools here, you're so relaxed, so zen because of the beautiful, relaxing sort of colour schemes, things that you've got going on. So let's talk a little bit more about sort of the the finer design details like we mentioned. So actually, when you mentioned, Sophia, then that these are actually working cabinets from the opposite side where that fluted element is, I literally thought that was just acoustic paneling. You see that a lot now, don't you? So that was like a fixed partition, and then it's sort of that was the room divider. So it's great that again you've added a functional element to either side of that and incorporated that within the design. Also, small decisions on having vertical wood grains on your exposed doors as well. That always makes it look taller, I think. For the base cabinetry, and then again replicating that on your drawers as well, because sometimes that's missed and that's horizontal. And these the elements that, again, when you walk into a well-designed kitchen or good design, you won't necessarily notice what's good about it. But from our side, these are all the things that's ticking in the background, isn't it? To be like, yes, you know, we need this here, we need, that needs to be, the grain white needs to be turned the other way, things like that. So it works beautifully. And I think definitely adding the fluted elements on this and breaking up that, this section here where the larder cabinets are, if you were to have another white larder in between that, again, it will be a completely different look. So I think it's so nice that you've incorporated, a beautiful sort of, element or floating element with the drawer boxes as well. It just adds a different dimension to the design and plays on the bespoke element that you can get with Sola, which works really lovely. And then what was the inspiration sort of going for the little sort of letterbox?
Open shelf, yeah.
Open shelf.
Again, same there, just to bring in a little bit of wood element within the white cabinetry, and also functionality. You know, when you're in front of your sink, and there are certain things that you want to have really easily accessible, but you don't want to have them on your actual worktop. To have a little shelf, we sometimes do a floating shelf in wood or stone, but here we just incorporated into the cabinetry, just that little letterbox opening where you can have easily accessible bits and pieces for everyday use.
No, for sure. And I suppose from a visual element then as well, it just breaks up having just white wall cabinetry.
Exactly.
So that's a beautiful way of incorporating wood and not necessarily having to incorporate it directly on your doors. And that, goes so well with everything that we've been sort of speaking about today. Is there anything else that's been sort of hidden away that we need to know about? Because you've got great stories for every project.
No, I think the main hiding place is behind that fluted wall in the back, and obviously it's all the other things, fridge and freezers and stuff like that, which is hidden behind panels.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for going through those two examples, with us and talking through the different material choices and why Sola have incorporated, certain design elements, because I know this is always so helpful, for everybody listening and watching, especially if you're new to the kitchen industry, which so well, I suppose, actually, all those many moons
After
ago.
19 years.
Yeah, when you were doing it yourself, you probably, was so excited to learn about all these different elements and then bring in your Swedish sort of heritage sort of within the designs, and they're just, you can just see how beautiful all of the designs that you create are. To wrap things up then now, for homeowners who are feeling, very inspired from today's conversation, but they're thinking about introducing a more Scandinavian sort of feel within their upcoming sort of kitchen design, what would you say are your top 3 considerations that they should focus on?
Okay, so top 3. I have to start with functionality, and I know it's not only Scandinavian, but function is key. However beautiful a kitchen is, if it doesn't work for you, it just will never work. And so my top advice there would be use a professional designer. So kitchen designers do kitchen design every day, all day. They spend a huge amount of time learning about materials, new appliances, how worktops function in different areas, and they can give really solid advice on what will actually work to avoid a client to make mistakes, basically. So because kitchens, it's a huge investment. It's not a cheap thing to put in, and it's really important to get that function and get the advice to make sure it works. So that would be my first general thing. To Scandify it.
I love that word. Why do we only use that now? Scandify.
So to Scandify it, I would say main thing would be try to bring in some wood elements, some natural wood elements, and it can be in small details, or it can be a bigger area of the kitchen in wood. But when you're bringing natural wood into the kitchen, it brings such a warmth into the space. So even if you prefer mainly painted or even metal or things like that, a little bit of wood, if it's a part of a worktop on the island for breakfast, or if it's a full row of wood cabinets, whatever it might be, that wood will really bring in some warmth and some feel to the kitchen. And then think of your light. when you choose colors and materials, when you go to a showroom, the colors will look very different compared to when you have them at home. So bring home the colors and the materials and look at them in your actual space, because they may look very, very different. And also when looking at colors, if you have a painted cabinet, don't look at it flat, because that will have a completely different color from if you take it up and look at it horizontal. So bring sample pots home and paint part of the walls, or paint part of your existing kitchen cabinetry, just to see what the colors will look like in your own room, and how the light works with the kitchens and the colors.
I'm so happy you've made that fair point, because I say this to clients all the time, and the reference make sure it's not horizontal, keep it vertical, as you say, is just an absolute game changer. And sometimes why you can go more braver with your colour scheme, which is obviously what we've mentioned before. So that, amazing top 3 points. So we've got function, we've got Scandify with words, wooden elements, and then we've got, focus and, take more consideration with the actual lighting of the space and making sure that you're bringing those samples home with you. So I think, again, 3 very...
If I can bring a fourth in, just to
come on.
general, I'm all about function. Don't overcrowd the kitchen. I think it's really important, particularly in London, where we do a lot of work, and where a lot of kitchens are maybe not that big. It's easy to try to cram in too much, but don't try to cram in too much, because it may feel a bit overwhelming. Make sure that the circulation in the room is works, and you give yourself enough space for opening dishwashers and doors and people passing. So that was my last point.
For sure, and making the cabinets go further from an accessibility perspective.
Absolutely.
So again, you've been amazing, Sophia. Thank you honestly so much for all of your words of wisdom, from how the story of Sola Kitchens has started, right through to your amazing sort of design advice, and obviously your client projects and your background as well, and bringing in that element to the UK for us. So for our listeners, if you have any questions for Sophia, or you want to share sort of your own design journey, say if you're looking to incorporate or Scandify your upcoming kitchen design, let us know on social media. So that's at Love Your Kitchen Podcast. We'd love seeing your projects and continuing, the conversation. And thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you have liked what we have spoken about, why not like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, what you can do is click on the notification bell to keep yourself notified of all the new content to come.